Hello, my name is Pavel Krivanek. I work for Schmidt Inženýrbüro für Bauwesen via a small consulting company named Nidea. And in this presentation, I will talk about our experiences with porting of VisualWorks code to Pharo. Schmidt Inženýrbüro für Bauwesen is a German company which does construction engineering in all the Germany. It already did about over 8,000 of projects. And for those projects, you need a lot of documents, revisions of those documents, you need plans and so on. And it's a huge amount of stuff that you need to deal with. And for this, Schmidt uses in-house built applications named PerDocuMaps, which is classic style fat client desktop application that is written in VisualWorks. Except VisualWorks, it uses as a database PostgreSQL. The tables are mapped to Smalltalk objects via Glorp mapping. For low-level data transfer, it uses Delta library, which is a library written in C and partly in Smalltalk. And of course, for business purposes, it needs to be connected to Microsoft Office. So there is a lot of good reasons why we still should keep to use VisualWorks. It's a solid implementation. It has a good database support and more or less native user interface on Windows, good Windows support too. It is proven solution. It has many business realizations already done, and it has professional vendor support. And the main reason why we should stay with VisualWorks is that we have code that is written in VisualWorks. But unfortunately for all the Smalltalk community, there are also very good reasons why we should stop to use VisualWorks. In the last years, it shows very slow progress, and it seems that the vendor stopped interest in this product, and when vendor lost this interest, why developers should care. So we think that for the new projects, the VisualWorks is no more the, at least today, the best choice. So what to choose? We can switch to another programming language, but here all of us know that there is plenty of good reasons why we should keep to use Smalltalk. So what about Pharo? Is Pharo the good alternative to VisualWorks for this project? Okay, it has good database support, but is it good enough for us? The Windows support is there, but again, is it good enough? There were some attempts about the native user interfaces in past. Can some of them be used? We have some vendor support, but the only thing that we can say for sure is that we have code which is not written for Pharo. So what people from Schmidt did was they contacted the Pharo Consortium and organizations that support Pharo development, and they showed the list of requests that they have and asked, is Pharo ready for us project? And they looked at it and said, yes, it is. Not completely, but we need to improve some stuff, but we will do it. Let's collaborate and we will improve those things. So very well, then you have the last issue that you have the existing code in VisualWorks that you need to port to Pharo. It has many obstacles. Of course, VisualWorks and Pharo use different version control systems, different file formats to store code. There are some significant language differences, more significant semantics differences, and the greatest issue is that they use completely different UI frameworks. But that's not all. The problem is that the application that you want to port is still under active development in VisualWorks. At least it was at the beginning of the transition project. So what you need is to have a bidirectional transformation from VisualWorks to Pharo, and ways how to manage the code, manage the changes that you did. Also, the Pharo itself is at least for the UI part that we really need under heavy development. So the API is not stable and things are changing day from day and so on. And of course, like for every project, you have a limited time scale and human resources you can allocate. So for the transformation of the code itself, we are lucky that VisualWorks has source codes located, stored in XML files. So we can easily read them. The problem is that when you do that, you need to deal with the language differences, and you cannot load that code directly into your image because of all the dependencies that you have from the original VisualWorks implementation. And of course, if you have, for example, some extension to object class or some other basic system classes, you can easily corrupt your system. So the sources in VisualWorks have one more issues. If you store the same package twice, you can get files with two different contents, which means that it's not suitable for versioning in tools like Git. So the approach we choose for this.
Why don't you use Monticello?
Monticello, because it's not good enough. Simply. The thing that we used was ring Metamodel. So for that, we anyway needed to have a slightly modified scanner parser to be able to load the VisualWorks code. But the models that are in a ring allow easy transformations. You can have multiple models at once in your image without any risk of system corruption. We have tools to export the ring models into tonal formats and store it to Git, where you can easily version it. And you can also browse the ring models with tools like Calypso. And what we did is the way how to again take the Git content, imported that into ring model, and after that re-exported the PST format so VisualWorks can easily read it again. What language differences we needed to deal with? The most important one is that VisualWorks has namespaces, so you can have two different methods with the same name in different namespaces. Qualified literals is a concept that is heavily used in VisualWorks for description of user interfaces, and it has no alternative in Pharo. And VisualWorks has a different approach for shared variables and has a different class definitions, and also very different syntax for FFI calls that we need for the Delta library. On the other hand, in Pharo, you cannot use many extensions that Pharo has if you want to use that code again back in VisualWorks. So you cannot use dynamic arrays, traits, slots, and other crazy stuff. So for the transformations, we needed to find a way how to annotate the code and we wanted to have those annotations close to the code itself. So we add some special commands on places next to the AST nodes that describe what we want for reverse porting. And also we add some methods that add some required metadata that are deleted during the transformations. The real pitfalls appear when we were talking about semantics, differences in semantics. The very well-known stuff is that VisualWorks doesn't have implicit initialization of objects if you send a new message, which is easy to deal with, but it can lead to very strange issues when you have the same method in VisualWorks and in Pharo, and they behave differently, and you need to subclass them. Some methods in VisualWorks and in Pharo have the same name, but they have different semantics, like pragma selector. VisualWorks and Pharo have different dependencies mechanism. VisualWorks has a wipe mechanism that is used for object finalization that is not present in Pharo at all. Then a very big issue is that symbols and strings have different approach to equality in VisualWorks and in Pharo. And more interesting stuff is that messages like up to all have side effects that are really different in those two dialects. So it can lead to really strange issues that are not easy to detect. There is more of stuff like this. Nil response to size. VisualWorks has different approach to storing nils in sets. It has some strange results for ends with and things like that. For example, for the keys message on dictionary in VisualWorks, it returns set in for array, and that can lead to error somewhere completely else if you try to add some new item to this collection. So if you have so many small issues, small incompatibilities, what can you do with that? It's almost impossible to do it, detect it using static analysis. So the only thing that you can do is to use tests. So thank you. One big part of the transition effort we do is to improve test coverage of the code base we have. We use techniques like mutation testing and UI testing to improve that. And of course, it's not valid only if you want to port something from VisualWorks to anywhere else. If you want to, for example, upgrade from one Pharo version to another, you want to be sure that everything works. So the test is the only thing that can save you. When you're transforming the system, it also helps if you have a good structured layered design. When if you have some bees, they are only on one level. So, and we are lucky that the Predicate Maps application uses Apart framework, which is great code written by Richard Utner. It's a framework that tries to really separate the model layer from the UI part and minimize the need of gluing logic and improve the stability and things like that. For that, it uses concepts named parts that communicate with outside world using part interfaces, and they are strictly separated from the UI clients. So you can have multiple clients on one part without any interruption. For that, it uses well-defined first-class entities like actions, conditions. You can, for example, describe if something is disabled, why it's not disabled. So you can let know to the user why it behaves like this. It has support for enumeration. It has a lot of predefined parts for list trees and so on. So it's highly usable. The transitions of data in the applications are solved using redirections that are also well described. Normally, if you are building a user interface, you only need to specify a layout in the Apart framework. Everything else is solved on the model layer, but we have also a way how to describe even the layout in the model, so with using UI configurations, and so you can really generate your user interface. Because we are able to use many UI clients, We also have client for recording of stuff that you do, so then it automatically can generate tests for your user interface based on what you did with your mouse and keyboard and so on. So it will create those methods that you can run on CI many times per day, and things like that. It has support for prompts models. We have support for Glorp and Trecho, and we will improve stuff in the next releases too. So the main task was to port this apart framework for VisualWorks to Pharo, which was not completely easy because it was highly dependent on the concepts that VisualWorks uses. Their dependencies management. VisualWorks uses aspect adapters, while Pharo uses volley holders in slots. And for that, for example, for the binding of the views to the models in VisualWorks, you have some application model that uses a UI builder and together with definition of the specification of the user interface, it creates widget and sets the binding to it. But in Pharo, we have no direct alternative to apart application model. There is no UI builder, no aspect adapter. So we needed to create layers to that. And for example, for the application model, we use specialized for spec presenters and have some mechanisms to deal with it. So in the end, it works. Those graphs are significantly simplified, so it's much more complex in reality. But it works. For the bindings that we use for talking to other world, the Delta library was ported by Bernd Enkelmann. For that, he really needs to use threaded FFI, so it was not ready at the beginning, so we needed to use some intermediate step using polling. Benedict L. Did connection of C#, of Pharo to C# and Microsoft Office code. With the collaboration of the Schmidt and Pharo Consortium, we are improving the infrastructure for the Pharo. So Consortium does the threaded FFI. It works on spec 2 that, as you saw today, the GTK binding for that. It works on better Windows support, headless VM, and so on. But that's not all, because we also want to do stuff Pharo community will benefit from. So the apart framework itself will be open sourced. We are already writing user-friendly documentation more than those 2 pages. So you will be able to write your own applications. We will publish complex examples that will use Glorp. When we are talking about Glorp, Glorp itself was present in Pharo. The version in Pharo was quite obsolete. It was based on version 8.0. While the Perduco maps used version 8.2 in VisualWorks. But the very latest version of Glorp is even newer. It's 8.3.1-23. So because it's a critical part of our infrastructure, we needed to update it. So what we did is that we needed to look at the Pharo packages, repackage them to again fit the VisualWorks structure. Then we did analysis of all the changes that were done in Pharo. check all the formatting changes and so on. And after that, we used our tools to export Glorp again from VisualWorks and merge them to the changes that were done in Pharo. So after some testing, and this process is still ongoing, the Pharo community can use the very latest Glorp implementation again. One thing that we needed is to be able to use GTK trecle surfaces in the GTK to be able to draw stuff. So together with Esteban Lorenzano, we worked on this issue. So as you already saw on his presentation, this is working and done. The original implementation in Pharo of SVG has some a little bit artistic sense for displaying the icons. While in the original PDM code written by Heek company, we had much better code for parsing of styles and dealing with arcs and so on. So we found a way how to merge their code with the current implementation. So we are now able to display SVG files more accurately. What we want is to be able to run multiple Pharo images in parallel and let some task operate in different threads. But there was an issue that in Pharo, when you opened, at least on Windows, the same image file multiple times, you had a lot of issues with write accesses to another files that the image is using, like changes file and so on. For this purpose, we needed to do read-only image mode on Pharo, so it allows us to really open the same image multiple times with different tasks and communicate them using seamless between them and using tasked features to organize the tasks that needs to be done, and it seems to work quite nicely. Because we want to use our applications in multiple languages, we also looked at the Gedit Text package. So it needed some care. We made it work in the latest Pharo and changed some basic stuff to make it usable again. So you can load it and use it in your projects too. So if you want to port your own application to Pharo, you should probably do some preparation steps, like improve your tests, try to clean your architecture because it will make the transition easier. But with our tools, in the end, the transition itself of the code, the transcription of the code is not a big issue, but it's only the first part of the story. So you probably will need some things that needs to be done in Pharo. So do not hesitate to contact the Pharo Consortium to talk to us, and we will provide you support in this. And it would be nice if you learned also how to participate on Pharo development, because in the end, Pharo is not just a free alternative to VisualWorks. It has some additional value. You can have real control over this dialect of Smalltalk. So remember that Pharo is yours. And I think that with the collaboration of Schmidt company, with Pharo Consortium, INRIA RMoD team, and others, we can really make Pharo much better for businesses of all of us. Thank you for your attention. Any questions?
Yes. I didn't understand the conversion process yet. So you export, or you take a VisualWorks file out, you import it into some Metamodel thing, and then you write everything out as Pharo source. Is that like it works?
Yes, the ring model, ring Metamodel allows you to model statical code inside the image like an object, and it has quite nice support for tools and export to tunnel and so on. So what we are doing is that we load the metadata from the VisualWorks into this model, and then we store this model in the way that we use already in Bootstrap and things like that.
Okay, maybe a different approach. So, for example, you need to rename classes when you have namespaces, right?
Yes.
So the renamed classes, or the dotted names, they're everywhere in all kinds of methods. So you have to rewrite these methods. So who is rewriting these methods?
We are writing it using transformations we do on this model. So we do it manually, like it's not magic.
So did you change string literals? Because VisualWorks uses character line fit on Windows, and Pharo uses Apple, just character.
No, we do not do this automatically.
So then you have problems editing code in Pharo. If you have character line fit in Pharo editor, then you have problems with editing it.
Actually, for our purposes, we do not convert all code from the original applications, as you read, as Richard mentioned yesterday. So we only choose good parts of it. So we had no issue with this. But we do not. If it would be needed, it would be no problem to do that.
Okay, and what about UTF-8 source? Do you have a source in VisualWorks? Do you have it in UTF-8?
Because Pharo has UTF-8 support, of course.
Yeah, but it doesn't work if you have it in a meta source. You have to change it.
We had no these issues. So.
Okay.
I don't think that's a big deal.
Okay, because we imported from VA Smalltalk and we need to change some things in Pharo. Thanks.
Did you
again?
Did you consider Syncom and Georg approach to integrate Object Studio into VisualWorks?
Who is talking? I do not see it. Okay. Again?
Could you understand my question?
No.
Did you consider Syncom's and Georg approach to integrate Object Studio into VisualWorks?
I do not hear well. So,
Did you consider Syncom's and Georg approach to integrate Object Studio into VisualWorks?
I still do not remember. No, okay, Richard says no. I don't understand.
Okay, here.
Yes.
When you have semantic differences, what do? You try to avoid them in the source code, or you have some other. So, for example, the asset for the array with nils. What do? You avoid that kind of code, that kind of idioms, or
we rewrite the code to do not use this.
Okay.
I have another one. Sorry. Yeah. Why do you use Ring and not the rewrite tools of the refactoring browser? I mean, they are extremely well in dealing with code. Why do you invent it new?
Because the model which is behind the refactoring browser is not suitable for this. It's the reason why we have chosen to create a Ring Metamodel instead of using some existing Metamodel, because of the abilities that it has. And of course,
Which abilities?
The Ring really does a good way when you're dealing with undeclared steps, so you can have only partial models that you are working with, and things like that. And in the end, we can open our browser on top of these models and change it online. And in the end,
First, we don't have VisualWorks. But yes. Second, I don't know. Second, what Pavel did with Ring 2 is that this is just, we have a metamodel that we can scope, and you can manipulate, apply the refactoring, the senders, the stuff like that on these kinds of code. This is what you do?
yes.
Yeah, that's it. But you know, it was free. Ring 2 is available for us because we do that when we do remote call, when we do Pharo things or things like that. So for us, it was just, oh yes, let's load that stuff here. Boom, this is free. Yeah, but except that the refactoring.
What you need to know is that, of course, we have limited time scale and human resources. We need to things let done. So we choose simplest solutions how to do stuff. So we do not have very generic ways how to convert the code.
I think one thing that might not have been clear that way is we started with a big bunch of stuff, but did not want to take more than about 20% of the existing code. So the Ring model advantage is mainly to deal with something that is not there and you do not want to convert and is undefined in a big scale. So that is the main reason compared to a refactory tool where you have to precise and say convert this to that, and we did not want to convert a lot. So that is the main reason to deal with that.
Thank you.